I'm hoping this is recording. Like the problem is I don't know how to like see.
There's a request to meeting host since you're the meeting host.
It says I'm recording. What about you? Is is
Top
it
right, there's a little button. It says recording.
okay? I'm gonna cross my fingers that we don't have to have this conversation more than once. Well, thank you. So just to kind of introduce, so right now I'm in grad class through Region 4, and so we got to do like three different observations throughout the year, and so there's different types that we have to do. So for instance, on the 25th, I'm going to be doing an observation, or I'm actually going to be leading something with Hinton and some of her staff to kind of go through like end of the year kind of fighting through. But one of them is just kind of classroom observations and then a follow up with the teacher. And so I thought you'd be a great person to kind of talk to.
Thanks. What
How,
is there anything specifically that you were looking for?
no, I think they just want to see kind of our interactions that we're going to have. I mean, basically, I'm treating this like I'm an assistant principal coming in to observe you. It's funny because I actually went and did another observation where it was a full observation with Mr. Jordan afterwards. And so, like for me, like I guess for me to start, like coming into the year, like do you what kind of goals or how do you set it up or like what's your focus on how to like be a better teacher from one year to the next? Or do you have any of those kind of things that you look at or try to set out?
So I guess that's a question that's part of the T-test system, right?
Yeah, and in general, I guess it's just more like I don't know, like what is your mindset kind of going into a new year and like what is it are you looking to do or is you just are you at the point where you're like I just want to make this as easy as possible because I've been doing it so well so long and how to refine that to make it just easier for students or are you like me I was more I wanted to pick one thing at the beginning of a school year and focus on how do I get better at that. So like my last year with Berkovich was just really hammering down some of the paperwork from the SPED and be
Mhm.
better at that. And that was kind of my goal for the year to kind of help me become a better teacher as the year went on.
So you're talking about a combination of personal and professional goals.
Yeah, just do you like how do you go about it as a teacher?
Right. So there's obviously the professional goals part and the goal setting part of T-tests. So that would entail putting in something in writing and having something concrete of
Right.
what do I expect out of it. And then there's the personal goal side, which I try to make it so that my T-test is one of my personal goals. So for
Okay.
example, this year I put that I wanted to increase the amount of positive feedback that I gave kids.
Okay.
Because one thing that it does for me is if I spend all of my time talking to parents, or just take that chunk of time talking to parents, if all of it is negative, and
Right.
the only time that I find in my day is to make a negative, like, hey, your kid is failing miserably,
Yeah.
then at the end of, just a couple of phone calls, if I do that for a week, I'm gonna get kind of sad about it. Versus making a sustained effort to make positive praise phone calls, which I'm trying to get better at. And trying to
Okay.
make a phone call, make those phone calls and say, hey, I don't do this often enough, but your kid's not in trouble, first of all. But I just wanted to call and say that they aced a really hard test and I'm proud of them.
Cool.
That's it. Have a great rest of your day. Like, and
Yeah.
I've had parents that were like, what? Like, that's it? And I was like, yeah, that's it. And they said, no one has ever called to say that before.
Right.
and given recognition to their child or even just taking time out of their day. So it helps this kind of positive feedback cycle of it helps me feel good about what it is that I do.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes life a lot easier. And then you develop that relationship with,
Right.
with the kids, which is what makes life easier at the end of the day.
Right. I, I'm with you 100%. I don't think we do enough of it. Um, do you try to do phone calls? Do you do emails ever with it too?
Usually it's more emails. And
Okay.
the good thing about emails is that you have is that it counts towards my T-test, it's documentation, but at the same time, the emails are definitely more personal.
You think so? Okay.
I'm sorry, the phone calls.
Oh, yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, the phone calls are more personal than the emails, but I do try to shoot out um, emails because it'll also is definitely easier, especially because I can do it
You can
while
knock
kids
out
are
a
taking
couple
a
of those.
test.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I know it's always hard to just find that time because usually it's like, oh, let's do it during the day when they're working, so they're not going to answer. Like I always found it hard because I felt like you were doing it and then you're getting they don't know your number, so they don't want to answer half
right.
the time. So you're
Or
getting
they say the school number and they assume that something's wrong.
gotcha. So is it mainly a lot you're just calling from the school phone then for that one?
Yeah, and another thing that I've tried out since we have technology nowadays
Yeah.
is we have Remind. So the
Okay.
Remind app lets us, I guess it keeps track of all of our students and their parents also sign up. But I think a few years back, I started just using my Google Voice number that I kind of
Yeah.
just had extra, and I use that for text messages. And I found that parents are more likely to respond to a text message than they are an email.
Right.
And I can pull up the conversation on my work computer. So
That's
it's
cool.
perfect. Yeah.
Um, just kind of going through today, like it was funny because like I know you're just going back through a test, but like it was just cool to see a couple of things that you did. I liked how you had your answer key on the back of your board. And so like you could tell which ones are like your self-motivated kids that are going up and looking at that stuff. And then even with like your key and kind of going through it, it's your work was already shown, so it was really nice for them to kind of go through. Do you ever get kids where they're like stopping you to ask the steps that you're doing there, or are they just a lot of really quiet sometimes? Because like I feel like
Third,
the intimidation part might be, or is yeah, was it just that class?
right. I see what you're saying. Yes and no to your question. So
Okay.
people will very often ask questions if they don't understand. But I
Good.
think one of the goals, I guess my focus is that by the time that they take that first quiz, since it is an upper level math class, by the time that they take the first quiz, before they even take the test, they usually, like the kids that get A's are already the ones that understand the material.
Right.
And so then we go over the quiz and then they take the test. So if they still don't know it by the time that we're taking the test, those are usually going to be the kids that have to take a retest.
Right.
And that's where I have to be really careful because I'm not going to go the same speed that I went the first time I taught it in class
I
because
gotcha.
there's 90% of the class that's sitting there bored to tears because they aced it.
I gotcha.
And that's the purpose of the retest and it gets kind of awkward to have, if people recognize, oh, like I keep on staring at this kid because they're, distracted or trying to work on their review instead of listening to me. And
I
that's the
gotcha.
one kid that has to take a retest on, this coming Thursday. And that's the one kid that I usually have to chase down. Hey, you didn't send me an email for your retest and you didn't do your corrections as I was, going over stuff.
Yeah.
And I kind of just stand close to them and kind of glance down at their paper and go like this.
Do they
Um,
usually pick up on that, do you think, from you?
yes.
Okay.
I think just some of my mannerisms that over time they get it. And I think that's one of the things that I have a very sarcastic sense of humor.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I
Good and
have
bad, right?
yeah, and I have a multitude of like I have in seventh period someone who especially autistic students have a hard
Yeah.
time picking up on sarcasm. So I've been really working on toning it down and saying what I mean and trying not to say, something that can be misinterpreted.
The other part I really liked was the one student was asking a really particular question about the test for tomorrow. And I really liked your response of like being straightforward with her,
Mm.
of like not, hey, I don't know, but like I think it really conveyed of like it's not what's on the test, it's your knowledge of the subject of matter. I thought you explained that really well too. And so like I felt like she got it.
Yeah, and that student is also one that will not complain, but if she misses a question on a test,
Yeah.
she's the kind of person that will not stop until she understands why.
Oh, good. Okay.
And she's also one of only, I think, 3 out of 150 students today that not just aced the test, but didn't get a single question wrong.
I gotcha.
And you saw how nuanced that test was with all the ins and outs. Like,
Yeah, logarithms is not the easiest thing to get down.
no,
I was trying to go back and remember some of the power. You said power rule. I'm like, I don't remember power rule.
yeah, it gets tricky, especially because this is the first time in both my on-level and KP classes that students are seeing logs and exponential functions for the first
Right.
time. And we go back to you'll appreciate this actually. From our Algebra 1 days, one of
Yeah.
the things that I showed the most often in my class is the STAR Algebra 1 reference material sheet.
Say that again.
The STAR Algebra 1 reference materials sheet.
Yeah.
I show it so often that
Right.
I actually have a printout of it next to every single class's sign in.
Okay.
Like I'm obnoxious about it. And I say, hey guys, where else should you have seen this equation? Like difference of two squares, perfect square trinomials.
I
And I say,
gotcha.
hey, guess what? This is a star Algebra 1 TEKS. You're in Algebra 2. You should know how to do this. So the last time was log rules are the inverse, the opposite of exponential rules.
Yep.
So that's the first thing I pull up is x squared times x to the third power. Is
Okay.
it x to the fifth power or is it x to the sixth power?
I
I'm
gotcha.
like, y'all should know this from Algebra 1.
Just to try to refresh them, especially since they probably had
Exactly.
geometry last too, right?
Yeah.
How much do you guys? I saw you also had the pink sheet that was like the working on calculator. So how does that typically work for testing then? So like they get the white one and then they turn that one in, or is it 2-day test type of thing?
We've been we've been struggling with this system.
Okay.
That's actually the old system.
Okay.
And what we experimented with a little bit this year, especially because like their QSE tomorrow, you probably heard us talking about it,
Yep.
where I said, what are you going to use on the QSE tomorrow?
I was shocked you said Desmos that they get to use Desmos on it.
Oh yeah. It's even on
Yeah.
the Algebra 1 tests now.
Okay. So
Yeah, so
they're able to pull that up with their computers then,
yes.
obviously, for on the test. Okay.
Yeah, so while they're taking the test, they can open up within the same testing window, so they have access to a legitimate graphing calculator.
Okay. Yeah, because the other thing that I liked that you pulled in was like actually going through the calculator. It's nice with the interactive board that you can actually click on it, and it seems like that makes it a lot easier to
Yeah,
students to kind of go through and learn some of that and how to do it.
I remember the days of using the document camera.
Oh heck yeah. I remember the one that like you have the computer based one for it. I remember the soft actually I just really like the notepad. Like I'm just so used I'm such an old school and
To writing.
just give me a whiteboard. I just love writing on a whiteboard. Hard notes.
And
But
actually that's one of the drawbacks of all of this
yeah.
technology. But because I'm also old school when it comes to that,
Yeah.
I'm becoming more and more aware that my students actually learn better when they write stuff down.
Well,
To
yeah,
the point
for sure.
where I've made an effort to print every single assignment for the students that choose to do it on paper.
Okay.
And I have like at least between a half and 75% of my students that are grabbing the copies as they come in. because they know that they do better if they write it down. And then I have them submit a picture of their work digitally.
That's cool. Because that's always my biggest fear. Like I know with Algebra 1, they talk about like it's all on computer, and I just feel like you're not going to get as good results versus a paper copy. But I
Right.
do understand the incentive of having a computer because the computer can read the questions to you. The computer can do some of that stuff. But like I feel like it's not as important to read the problem as it is to be able to write on the problem.
Right. And also for giving the notes in the first place, I think one thing that note taking forces us to do is to condense the information into what we need to,
I
like the
got you.
most important information. So I remember Christy and Chelsea and I sitting there trying to figure out like whose notes were the cleanest and who
I
had
got
the
you.
most condensed form of information. And I feel like that art is slowly getting lost.
So what does notes look like for your classroom? Like, so that last unit, where are most of your kids keeping notes?
It's all digital.
Okay.
Yeah, so they get a PDF and they're annotating the PDF.
Are they good at, do they understand folders? I feel like most kids don't understand how to do a math folder and this unit folder or like to like yeah,
Compartmentalize, yeah.
that's the word. Yeah.
I just got on, I don't want to say it that way. I just helpfully gave someone some advice during Connect the other day. They came to see me
Yeah.
about, actually, no, it was during the class period. They were asking a question about, I think it was a factoring question.
Okay.
Mind you, we're on, logarithms and
Yeah.
exponential functions. And I looked at the question and I said, "Are you asking me how to factor?" And he said, "No, I know how to factor." And then I said, "Are you sure? Because I don't think you would be asking me about this one particular question if you knew how to
Right.
factor." So I said, "Well, let's put a pin in this question. Let me just do something a little bit easier on the board." And I wrote down a very basic factoring question behind me on the whiteboard. And it was something where everything was divisible by two, and he did
Yeah.
that thing where he put a line under it and put divide by two, and then put his answer. And I said, "Wait, so you're saying that what you wrote down here is the same as what I wrote up there?" And he like kind of hesitated and was like, "Yeah, I'm saying, so you're saying that x plus 2 is the same as 2x plus 4?" He's like, "No, but you divide it out, something like that."
Yeah.
Um, but I told him to get out one of his old tests, and he said, "Well, my backpack's kind of a mess." And I was like, "Even better." And he started producing all of his math stuff, and his math folder was just, there was a couple papers. And I said, "Where's the rest of your math stuff?" He said, "Well, it's everywhere else."
Oh, I gotcha.
And so he had a quiz from the first quarter, but he had a hard time finding the last test that we took.
It's a
So I
lost
said,
art, isn't it?
"Yeah,
Yeah.
they're losing the art also of just, I mean, especially if I'm the one who gives paper copies, they have way more paper in my class. They still have a good amount of paper in other classes,
I
but
gotcha.
it's becoming a lost art because the school, I don't know if you're as aware of this uh anymore, but we're running out of paper, and I think that they're not wanting to give us as much paper. I think
I
that
had I had a bigger issue with that when I was at Oak Ridge before I
Mhm,
got to Klein Oak, where they were like, "No, we just don't have paper." And like when I got to Klein Oak, I was like, it was amazing because the like at least we had the support in math of like
mhm,
print all the stuff. But yeah, no, like I remember with special ed kids, I'd always do different color folders and we'd help them kind of get organized as freshmen. And it's scary that you got juniors and upper level class that probably also need some of the same stuff. Because like I think we also should take like a day every semester or a couple days where you go, all right, let's create these folders for all your classes. So like
right.
this is my math folder. Here's all the units and almost like you're breaking it down with the syllabus
Mhm.
and kind of showing that layout because like it's a like I feel like that skill alone will translate to a lot of stuff that they do post high school. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You only
Well, there's no, I was thinking of something else that I did.
yeah.
And it's usually towards the end of the semester or the year or the beginning, and
Okay.
that's a clean out your emails day.
Ah, okay.
And that's actually, I've been told from former students that that's like the skills that I've just in half a
Yeah.
class period where I say, hey, create a filter for your Gmail account so that it filters all of those Schoology notifications that you've never opened before.
Yeah.
And they have thousands.
That would be cool. It's
So
scary. Like,
that,
do you feel like I know you don't have enough time, but I just feel like something like that needs to be done almost earlier though.
well, it's kind of along the same lines, especially, I mean, you're probably seeing it in if you're doing administrative, school stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's this whole saying of, those first 2 weeks of school, some teachers are going to spend a day or two going over basic stuff and then try to get a head start on the learning. And one of the first things that I learned as a teacher is that if you actually put in the effort, put in the time in those first 2 weeks to get your systems and routines down,
Yeah, for sure.
that it actually pays off in the long run because you're not wasting time in those first couple minutes of class to get people situated.
Well, we hit our time limit, so but I'm sure we could talk for another hour on stuff like this. But like I said, my biggest takeaway, I really enjoyed the way that you kind of went through your test. I love the technology aspect with the iPad. I'm assuming you're doing a lot more interactive stuff when you're going through lessons, and I'd love to see that with how you do that with your kids. But just as simple of just placing your tests on the back was just really neat to see them kind of go and interact with them. And it sounds like you've got good structure, especially like I like the one you're like, hey, can you email me? Like that way I've got a record of it. Like I thought that was really smart of just the simple of like get them the habit of just making
Mhm.
those conversations with you. So thank you for your time, man.
Yeah, for sure, Peter.
All right, now I'm gonna hit stop and hope this works.